One of the things that all the panelists downstairs seem to agree on is that pricing is going to play a huge role in the drive to shift people to greener technologies and more sustainable ways of living and doing business. What role do you see pricing playing, and why is it so important?
Well, I do think we have to explore that much more aggressively than we have in the past. I think it's a nice notion that people will do what's right because it's right, and I do actually think that we all want to do that, but experience shows us that pricing can be a very powerful motivator in terms of changing behaviors and incenting the right thing. So take, for example, if you go back to the 1970s, the manufacturers made smaller cars very quickly when gas prices went up. Even today, when I talk to car dealers, they tell me that it's not how people feel the environment that produces hybrid sales, it's the price of gas. When the price of gas goes up, sales explode. When it comes down, sales go down. So I think this is a lever we have to use more aggressively, whether it's in issues like waste or electricity or water or carbon emissions. We need to figure out what is the true cost of these public goods, essentially, and make sure that we're not using them today and putting a huge burden on future generations. So I'm very much in favor of exploring that much more aggressively.
And that's a real public policy and political challenge too, isn't it? Because I mean, that really does involve saying to people, look, there's a cost for this. And sometimes that's difficult for people to hear. Do you think that we can overcome that?
I do think so. I mean, the debate was started in earnest with Stéphane Dion's election campaign, and I think that you can argue with how that was conducted, timing, etc. But he had a point, and it was good for him for starting the dialogue. I think the sheer economics of issues like water or healthcare will produce the debate, and the more debate we have, the more we'll get there. It is obviously tough for politicians to promote this now, especially in the current recession, but I think it's just a matter of time, and I think we'll get there.
All right. You talked a little bit too about the relationship between private sector, government, and the non-governmental organizations that are pushing a green agenda. You mentioned that we've come a long way, but you feel like we've got a long way to go to foster those kind of the trust and interrelationships that are necessary. Why do you feel that way?
Well, I think it's just a factor of generations of a context where you didn't do that. Typically corporate organizations didn't seek out environmental organizations or other activist groups to have a dialogue, and so I think we're in the early stages of that. We have a policy at TD of doing so very proactively, and I think it pays off in better thinking, better ideas, better approaches for us, and frankly I think it's good for both sides because we do learn from each other. I think you could make the argument that some of the NGOs are as wedded to anachronistic contexts as our corporate guys are, and the more we can talk, the better. The reason I say that it's still evolving is that I think we're amongst the more aggressive in doing it, but it's still early days for us. We're still learning how to do it. Sometimes there's a hiccup, and something gets said that wasn't intended to be said, and so you have to learn, and many organizations aren't doing it yet. So that's why I say it's early.
Okay. There was one question in the research as well about optimism. A lot of people saying that they're okay with the way things are and they have a good idea of where they need to go, but not sure that that's actually where we're headed, if you know what I mean. But you say that you're an optimist. Why are you an optimist?
I'm an optimist because if I stand back from the whole thing and just look at the big trends, whether they be in conservation or in managing carbon emissions or just the environment in general, I think these are irreversible trends that will wax and wane, for example, with the recession or other things. But if you look at them over a period of 20, 30 years, I think they're just going to continue to strengthen in terms of their impact on society. And I think, as with all megatrends, there'll come a point where you reach an inflection point or a tipping point where it will really take off. And the greatest sign for me is that the private sector is jumping on board. I can name you so many organizations now that get that this isn't about corporate social responsibility. This is about making more money for future shareholders and serving customers that will live, work, and play differently in 5, 10, 20 years because of these trends, serving them very differently. So once you get that going, that's the profit imperative at work, and that will work and promulgate these changes.
Excellent. Thanks very much for your time today, Mike.
You're welcome. Thank you.